You mentioned inflation very briefly. I mean, that's an area that everyone is feeling right now. When we talk about problems with the economy, you've been posting a lot of Facebook Live videos recently, really on that issue of what's going on in the economy. So I'm curious, as we think through reasons to buy Bitcoin, it's not just okay, this is a way to make your money, multiply your money quickly, or that kind of thing. There's some serious underlying issues with the U.S. dollar, with just fiat currency, which is any type. I'm assuming any type of currency all
That's
over
made
the
up.
world,
Yes.
made up currency,
Which is all of the currencies around the world, other than Bitcoin. Yes.
I'm curious for people who are genuinely struggling to comprehend kind of what's going on in our economy and why Bitcoin is really the answer to so much of what's going on. Talk about that underlying issue there.
So the underlying issue with all money is that humans are sinful. And if you give them the ability to make more of the money, they will make more of the money. Never in human history have humans had the ability to make money out of thin air and not fallen victim to the temptation to do that. It's universal. So let me tell you the story of money, if I can, real quick.
Yes,
okay.
yes,
So
please.
Here's the story of money. It starts out with everybody bartering, right? Eggs for a cow for a house, right? But it's hard, right? How do you trade in eggs for a house, right? I mean, there's all sorts of issues trying to trade and barter. So we need money. So we need something that we can sort of trade into and then out of that's sort of uniform. Well, the first thing were beads and seashells. Beads because they were hard to make, seashells because they were hard to find. So that became money. So that was money that was easy to use, but ultimately was too plentiful. Money needs to be easy to use, but hard to make more of. Hard to find more of, hard to make more of. Ultimately, it became too easy to find more seashells or make more beads. Okay, so we switched to gold because gold solved the scarcity problem. So gold was then hard to make more of, so it checked that box. But gold was hard to use as money because it's hard to divide it. Like, how much gold do you need for a cup of coffee? Like a speck? Like a double speck? Like it's just, and then for large amounts, it's very heavy, like for large transfers. So gold had the reverse problem of seashells and beads, which was, one of them solved the easy to use problem, the other solved the hard to make more of problem. So we ended up with paper money on top of gold. So the original banknote of the United States says $10, and it says there is deposited in the Treasury of the United States $10 in gold coin, redeemable by the bearer upon request. Every single piece of paper that we use as money used to have the words on it that let you go to the Treasury of the United States and get the gold. And a $20 bill would get you an ounce of gold. And you could swap it in and out of gold anytime you want. So the logic was, we'll keep the gold in a vault, the paper will represent the gold, and then the paper will be easy to use, but the gold will be hard to make more of. Best of both worlds. Well, there's a problem with that best of both worlds, which was humans were responsible for how much of the paper represented the gold. And it took them all of about 4 seconds to think, but wait, not everybody wants the gold all at one time. So if we got $10 and 10 ounces of gold, like maybe there's $11. maybe there's one extra $20 bill that really doesn't have an ounce of gold backing it, and maybe no one will notice. Well, they got away with that for a period of time, and people noticed. And as people noticed, the value of the dollar started dropping. And it got bad enough in 1933 that Franklin Delano Roosevelt confiscated everybody's gold. He forced everybody to sell their gold to the U.S. government at $20 an ounce. And then as soon as they had finished taking everyone's gold, it was Executive Order 6102. In 1933, as soon as Franklin Delano Roosevelt and that administration was done taking everyone's gold, they repriced gold to $35 an ounce. So they forced everybody to give it to them at $20 for a piece of paper that said 20, but then they immediately revalued it to 35. And then basically they printed too much money again. Imagine that all over again. Until 1971, when at that point countries were allowed to swap their gold and the US dollar at $35 an ounce, not 20, because that went away because they printed too much money, but it was now $35 an ounce. Well, countries, the smart ones, started redeeming their US dollar paper dollars for gold until France decided that they had had enough of this, and they actually sent a warship to get their gold. And the US government saw the warship coming and they were like, this is a problem. Like, we don't have enough gold. Maybe we have enough for France, but like if everybody sends a warship to get their gold, Fort Knox is not going to have any gold anymore. So Richard Nixon took the US government off the gold standard. And he said, as of 1971, the paper you hold is backed by nothing. And so the actual paper went from saying, there is deposited in the treasury of the US government $10 in gold coins redeemable by the bearer upon request, to just $10. What is $10? It's printed paper. It's not backed by anything. So the gold in Fort Knox doesn't back anything. The paper's not backed by anything. So the problem with money through human history is we've been trying to find something that's easy to use and hard to make more of. And we've never, until Bitcoin, been able to find something that does both. So the pendulum swings back and forth between easy to use, but we need it to be harder to make more of. No, but that's too hard to use. We need to make it easier to use. Oh, but now it's not scarce enough. It's got to be harder to make more of. That pendulum has gone back and forth throughout human history as we've tried seashells and beads and wampum and tobacco and ultimately silver and ultimately gold and ultimately paper representing silver and gold until we get to Bitcoin, the very first currency that solves both problems of being easy to use and hard to make more of. So if you go to the core of what is wrong with our financial system, it's that humans are sinful and they print too much money. So that shows up in inflation. That shows up in the boom-bust cycle where all the printed money catches up with us and we go through a recession. And then that sort of cleans it all out and then they do it all over again. All of that, the boom-bust economic cycle, inflation, rising prices, all of that goes back to one core issue, which is that the money is controlled by fallen humans. And the fallen humans keep falling for the temptation to print more of it. And that is the problem Bitcoin solves. So when you solve that, everything you need to live your life starts getting slowly cheaper instead of medium fast, more expensive. Everything starts getting cheaper. You don't get the boom-bust economic cycles anymore. You don't have an economy built on debt anymore. See, debt makes sense because the dollars are losing value. So if you borrow money now, you can pay it back later when the dollars are less valuable. So there's this massive incentive for people to just borrow and borrow and borrow. And when all the prices are rising and you can't keep up, you borrow. Like people, they borrow against their 401k, they borrow against a second mortgage on their house, trying to keep their head above water. And I know it's a big claim to say Bitcoin fixes all of that because it requires a lot of research and study. People are like, no, like it can't like fix all of that. But it's the same way with Gutenberg and the printing press saying, this is going to solve the dissemination of information. You know, everybody's going to be able to get their ideas out. And people are like, no, there's no way that machine is going to let just like anybody share their opinion with anyone. Well, guess what? It let anyone share their opinion with anyone. So the major inventions of the wheel or fire or discovery or fire or the internet or electricity were transformational to humanity. Bitcoin is transformational to money in the way those transformational technologies have been transformational in other areas. And when you fix the money, you fix a bunch of other things. There's no money to fight pointless wars because you either have to tax it from your citizens, which is unpopular, you have to borrow it from your citizens, which is expensive. So like the government just doesn't do a bunch of stuff that makes no sense when you're on a sound money standard. And Bitcoin is the first sound money standard that's easy to use. Gold was relatively scarce. There's about 2% more gold that gets dug out of the ground every year. So every 36 years, the amount of gold doubles. I mean, so in your lifetime, the amount of gold that we know about that humans have access to will double and then double and then double if you live to be 90. Like, Bitcoin fixes all of that. And it's really transformational. It's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.